Is ATA 103 mandatory at FBOs? Well, it depends. This is a question that I struggled with for many years working at FBOs, and it took me much longer than it should have for me to learn what the truth was. Once you actually get a copy of ATA 103 and you read through it, if you read the first few pages, it tells you more than once, in no uncertain terms, that ATA does not mandate or enforce ATA 103, and the contents of that document are voluntary, and you must decide what to use and what not to use. Now, first, you have to understand that ATA 103 was written by the airlines for the airlines. So this is the Uniteds, the Southwest, the Deltas, the American Airlines of the world. They get together in a group called Airlines for America, A4A, which used to be called ATA, and they have a working committee, and I'm grossly oversimplifying when I say this, but they get together and say, the service providers that fuel our aircraft, what should we expect out of them? What should we expect for safety and reliability? What should we expect out of their equipment, and what should we expect out of their inspection programs? The results of that conversation are published as ATA 103. Now, the airlines fly into certificated Part 139 airports in the US. According to the FAA, there are just over 500 Part 139 airports in this country. There are over 5,000 public use airports in this country, and every one of them has a fuel provider, if not a full FBO, at every one of those airports. So 5,000 public airports, but only 500 of them see commercial traffic. That's 10%. ATA 103 was written by the 10% for the 10%. So where does that leave everybody else? You may be working at an FBO that is at one of those Part 139 airports, and you may actually handle commercial traffic. And it could be, I'm at a regional airport and this airline brings in 4 flights a week and we handle those. Or it may be at a much bigger airport and my company won the contract for these 12 gates with these 2 airlines, and they bring 20 or 30 flights a day and we handle those as well. That's scheduled airline traffic. That is exactly what ATA 103 was written for. So if you have one of those contracts, do you have to follow ATA 103? Yes, you do. Similar to that, you may have a fueling contract with a scheduled cargo operator like FedEx, UPS, DHL, or Amazon or something like that. Scheduled cargo. And they're going to treat them exactly like they're going to treat the airlines, and they're going to be following or expecting you to follow ATA 103. So if you have a fueling contract with a scheduled cargo operator, do you have to follow ATA 103? Yeah, you do. Now, short of that, you might be at an operation that sees chartered cargo airlines or chartered commercial aircraft, like maybe Kalitta is going to bring in a 727 or Amerijet's going to bring in a jet just to drop off some cargo. These may be rare or somewhat one-off occurrences, or it could be that the local professional basketball team, whenever they move, Delta brings in a 757 to pick up that team. Those are going to be regular airlines, and they're going to expect to be treated like regular airlines. They're going to expect you to follow ATA 103. You may also handle U.S. government or military aircraft, and they're going to expect you to follow MIL Standard 1548, latest revision. Now, what is the MIL Standard? Is that the military's version of ATA 103? No, it's not. It's guidance for service providers whenever government aircraft go into civil airports. And you know what it says? It says follow ATA 103, with a couple of very specific exceptions. But outside of that, follow the ATA 103. Follow ATA 103. Follow ATA 103. You might also have a general aviation customer that has adopted ATA 103 as its guiding document for its fuel providers. If you have a contract with NetJets or FlexJet or any large charter operator or possibly an ISBEO flight department, they're going to expect you to follow ATA 103. Now, they may come out and actually inspect and audit you, or they may just reach out to you and ask you to send in a signed compliance letter that states that you follow ATA 103. All that is an insurance check in the box that protects that flight department in case there is a fuel-related accident at your facility, and you really don't want to be on the wrong end of that. And your fuel provider, whether you're branded or unbranded or even just a distributor, they're going to base their expectations on your operation and your equipment on ATA 103. And most importantly, the airport authority may have adopted it as their guiding document, just like they would adopt NFPA 407. That's called an authority having jurisdiction, or an AHJ. If none of these apply to you, then no, ATA 103 is not mandatory, it's voluntary. So what should you do? Should you follow it? Should you not follow it? Well, I can bet with pretty good odds that you're already doing most of it. You're doing the core of it. You sump every day. You do the API gravity test when you receive fuel. You do the millipore test. You have a DP gauge. You change your filters out every year. You're already doing most of it. By the way, if you're not doing those things, please call me. There's some serious issues. And something else to consider here is just because it's not a requirement for you today doesn't mean it's not going to be a requirement at some point in the future. You may be working in an airport where the airport authority is just not that involved. They don't come around, they don't inspect you, they don't expect you to follow ATA 103. But the airport authority and the administration, those are humans just like anybody else, and administrations eventually turn over. And this industry trends to be safer and safer and safer. And you really can't predict who that next airport administrator is going to be, what their background is, or what their expectations are going to be. And you have to understand that sometimes people will change things because things really need to be changed. There's other people who will change things because they like a fresh look, they like the feel of things being changed. And there's other people who will just change things because they're the new sheriff in town and they feel like they have something to prove. You may be on the receiving end of that. So again, just because it's not a requirement today doesn't mean it's not going to be a requirement tomorrow. At the very least, you should get your hands on a copy of it and just read through it. You should know what those expectations are. And again, you're probably already following most of it. There may be some details that you didn't know about or maybe you're overlooking, but you're already doing most of it. And if that day comes when ATA 103 does become a requirement for your operation, it shouldn't be a shock. You can buy a copy of it directly through A4A. I'm not going to encourage anyone to breach copyright or licensing agreements, but you might be able to get a copy from someone who already has it. Talk to your fuel provider, they may be able to get your eyes on it. And once you actually get it, it's not a long read. The meat and potatoes is about 70 pages. If you're like me and the first time you read through it, there's a lot of stuff in there that you don't understand, reach out and ask questions. Talk to your fuel provider. Talk to the people who built your trucks and your tanks. You can reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to guide you through this document. And if it is truly voluntary at your operation, you got to make a decision. Should we follow it or should we not follow it? Now, some people might read through it and recognize the value in it and just decide to follow it anyway. And that's fine, you can certainly do that. There's always going to be a very small vocal minority on the opposite extreme that's just going to write it off wholesale and they don't want to do it. There's going to be a lot of people left in the middle who recognize the value of it but may not understand all the bits and pieces of it, what is important in there and what are the things that may not be so important. What are the details that we shouldn't sweat? Well, it certainly won't hurt you to follow it. It's only going to help you. It'll get you to understand your equipment and your operation much better. Now, what will it cost you? Well, it'll cost you a little bit of time every day, a little bit of time every month, a little bit of time every year. Financially, there may be some things that you don't currently have that you would have to purchase in order to follow it. Some operations don't have a multimeter, so you have to purchase one of those. You may have to purchase some testing kits that you don't currently use. You have to keep up with some of them and their expiration dates. You're going to have to spend some money on keeping some things calibrated every year. Well, if you want to make a value judgment about it, a good rule of thumb, I would say if the fuel touches it, you should follow what the 103 has for it. Does the fuel touch your filter? Yes. Does it touch your hose? Yes. Does it touch the nozzle? Yes. Does it touch the top of the tank, as in a high-level shutoff? Yes. You should follow all of the parts of ATA 103 that cover all the things that the fuel touches, at a very bare minimum. Now, beyond that, there are some acute safety considerations for things that the fuel doesn't touch, things like bonding cables. You should be following that as well. Now, does the fuel touch your interlock override switch? No. Does it touch your manuals, like having a notification procedure for customers and having an authorized personnel list? No, the fuel doesn't touch that. So if you want to not sweat those details, okay. You should do them anyway because it's only going to help you, but if you want to kind of turn a blind eye to some things, maybe turn a blind eye to that. So at the end of the day, ATA 103 may or may not be mandatory for your operation, but at the very least, I encourage you to get your hands on a copy of it, read through it, and you decide what's best for you. If you choose to follow it, you should follow it. If you choose to deviate from it, in a couple of places, you should document those. And this is a great opportunity to exercise risk management. Bring your stakeholders in, assess the risk, develop controls, implement, document, include that in your operations manuals, your fuel O&M manuals if you have one, your training syllabus, so that anytime someone comes to your organization to look at you through the lens of fuel QC, again, they're going to be referencing ATA 103, you should be able to quickly and knowledgeably respond with, I understand that that's what it says, here's the decision that we made, and it's documented and it's been communicated. I hope that this has made things more clear, maybe giving you a few things to consider. That's all I have today. Thank you again for watching. If you'd like to reach out and talk to me, you can reach me here. You can talk to me on LinkedIn. You can go to my website, maxqfuel.com. I'm still selling copies of my guidebook, Beyond the Standard. You can find it at my website. Again, thank you for watching. Be safe, be smart, and it's always okay to stop and ask questions.